not have 5G networks readily available. It's going to be 7% about in 2025. So they're stuck in 4G for a while. They're going to be there in the foreseeable future. Now let's take a look at the overall market. As you can see here, there's a huge number. $300 billion for mobile data services. How much of that is in Latin America? About 60 billion. That's still a pretty big number. And going from a top-down approach, we estimate if we can even get 0.1% of that market, that's $60 million right there. So that's pretty good. And how are we going to do that? We're going to go after these companies right here, these Latin American companies that are in this pickle. They're stuck in 4G for the foreseeable future. So why is that a problem? I'm going to pass that to Rachel, and she's going to tell us.
So, as Andrew said, these companies are facing a huge problem ever more now in the future. As you can see, in 2016, we only used 96 exabytes, but by 2021, that's going to increase to 278, which is a triple increase. That is in only 5 years. And in fact, video streaming takes up over 67%. And as you guys have all sat there in the audience watching your Netflix, watching YouTube videos, you know how much bandwidth and how much that takes up to watch these streaming services. So that data demand is only going to be there all the way through the future. And so, as this traffic does increase, you're good. So as this traffic does increase, these companies are not able to keep up with their revenue to keep up with this data demand. So they're not able to very much invest in these new technologies. And the reason why is because you as consumers want to keep paying that same price for your network operator for the foreseeable future. You do not want to have these drastic monthly increases each month. But at the same time, the opportunity and growth in this sector is going to increase dramatically. As you see in the future, smart cars will become the way of the future. And as you see in the pandemic too, virtual reality, augmented reality, that's all things that are happening now. And who knows in the future what type of technologies will come out. As you've seen in the past few months, cryptocurrencies, they have skyrocketed, and that is something that too all requires internet usage. So now I hand it back off to Andrew.
So currently, the only solutions to fix this data demand problem are to build more things, build more antennas, build more network, or either in 5G or 4G. And as we just discussed, revenues are dropping, and that's because they're not charging more. You guys probably pay the same that you pay for your data plan as you did 5 years ago. You're not paying more, but they still need to make more network. So this is a huge CapEx expense. And these mobile network operators know this. They are struggling. And why is that? So it's kind of twofold, right? The equipment providers, they want to sell you the next generation of hardware. They want to make their money from selling you 5G. And that's obvious, that makes sense. Another thing that might not be so obvious is the 5 companies listed up here on the left represent 95% of the market. It's a stagnant market, and it's ripe for disruption. They are not compelled at all to innovate. They're not compelled to do better because they're the best. They're on the market right now. So let's see what we can do to fix that. Let's take a look at our dream product right here. So as we discussed in the earlier slide, these are kind of mapped to the problems that we identified. The first problem, data demand, is going to be solved by a product that can accelerate your data rates, right? It's going to be solved, the CapEx problem is going to be solved by a shift from hardware solutions to software solutions. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit. But another thing that they need to have for the solution is it needs to be future-proof. Your 5G solution, it needs to be working with 5G as well in the future. Now, as you can see here, the economic benefits to these companies are the telecommunication companies can delay their infrastructure upgrades. They can push off their hardware refresh if they have a solution that solves the data demand problem without having to build new hardware. The equipment providers, they benefit as well because they'll have increased profit margins. Now, this might not be known to everybody, but software tends to have a profit margin of about 90 to 95%. As opposed to hardware, which has a profit margin of 50 to 60%. So it's a win-win solution, really. Now, what is our solution? So we're going to give them the MIMO Mapper, and MIMO stands for multi-input, multi-output. As you can see here on this diagram, the way I like to describe this is it's an analogy to the routers in your home, or in this room even. Everyone knows if you're in your home, the closer you're with the router, the better your signal is, the better your speed is. And as you get farther away, your signal goes down. That's because this is a router, or in the telecom world known as a base station-centric model, a base station-centric model. What we're trying to do is shift to a user-centric model. You as a user should be the center of the universe. And what we are doing with our algorithm is allowing you to coordinate multiple base stations to strengthen the signal that you receive. So you are always going to be in the center of this, wherever they are, right? So this is going to increase your data rates. And as you can see here on this slide, we do all those things that we spoke about. This graph right here represents, the black represents the current solution. So as you can see here, not even really using half the ability that you can. The red represents the upper theoretical bound, which hasn't been reached, but then the blue represents us. And as you can see, it almost doubles what you can achieve. So this is what we mean when we mean data rate acceleration. We can almost double what you're getting out of this. It's a software solution, so all you do is plug and play into your hardware, and it works with the stuff that you've got already. And it's future-proof for 5G, because this was initially designed for 5G, but it can work with 4G and even 3G. So it solves all the things that we're talking about. So how do we get into the market, right? We've got this great opportunity right now. I mentioned earlier that there's disruption happening, and the disruption is coming in the form of this, Open RAN, Open Radio Access Networks. Now, in 2010, data centers went through a revolution, a disruption, because everything shifted to this open source model. And telecom is going through that right now. We are going to take advantage of this by working with these disruptors that are trying to upset the balance of things as it is. We're going to work with them to get our software, our algorithm onto their equipment, and they're working with the mobile network operators that are trying to solve this problem that I just mentioned. And we're going to target these segments because these segments have lower expectations. It's not an urban region, so they're not used to great connections. They're happy to get connections at all. So we're going to test it out and make sure it works on these markets. So this is our market entry plan. And now Rachel's going to take you through financials.
So in order to get to that, we have two ways of generating revenue. The first is revenue sharing, so that is us going to get a percentage of this based off of tier revenue system that goes to us, and we'll be working with those network operators. And then our second option will be as our software solution, where we will be licensing out, and that will be as a tier system as well, but with set prices based on throughout. And then when you look at our breakdown of expenses for the next 5 years, we do invest very heavily into our research and development because, as Andrew says, that is what's going to get us into those doors. Is we need to be able to prove to all these companies that our technology is doing everything that it says that it is doing. So for the next few years, we want to invest heavily into that. And you can see if for the next 5 years, it does go down as we are able to prove with those initial experiments. And then that is why our end up first year, we will be running a little bit of a negative balance, but then within the next few years, we do come into a profit. And this is much conservative, but at the same time, it is showing you that we will generate a profit within 5 years. So now I hand it off to Zahid to go over our voice of customer.
Thank you, Rachel. So for the last couple of weeks, we were trying to identify the clients for the voice of customer service, and we figured out like from the equipment providers and the mobile network operator, we found like a 60%. This list just keep on growing. And among those six, whatever we have right now in our list, we figured out like according to their expertise, they are like 35% of them, they have the business background, and like 55% they have the technical background. And we sent out like a 20+ emails and were lucky to get like a 2 surveys done, and we got like a very positive input from the 2 people. One from the Verizon and one was Jinjiang. He was saying that the startups are ready for the turnkey technology, and Dave Gibbons from the Openga network, he was also very positive about this. Thank you.
All right.
Questions?
So that opens us up. Yes. Any questions you guys might have?
Okay. Questions for the team?
Yeah.
The graph where you're showing your data rates compared to that black line, is that current 4G or current 5G compared to your product? I couldn't really read the bottom.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, for sure. So basically, this graph, right? It's very technical. That's why I didn't go into it in too much detail. But this at the bottom, it's massive MIMO. It's a 4G and a 5G technology. It's currently in both of them.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's what 4G and 5G companies are using?
Yes.
And so is that like that black line, would that be a current company using 5G with massive MIMO?
A company with 5G. Yes, that would still represent a company using 5G. It's into the technology side of it. It's using the spectrum here. If you see spectral efficiency,
Yeah.
this is how we achieve the data rates. So this gets us bigger data rates, but it's not a direct correlation to like 5G, 4G, this
Okay.
part.
Alright.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this is just one aspect of it, but it is representative of what we wanted to explain.
Okay.
So one of the things you noted, your technology seems to be, it's cheaper than building the infrastructure and everything. Like you said, 5G performance at a 4G cost.
Mhm.
But in your financials, you told me we're gonna base this on accomplishing, it was a pie chart, 1/10 of 1% of the market. If you're that good, why are you only getting 1/10 of 1% of the market? I mean, you should be able to get a lot better than that if you're that much better.
So like we mentioned, it is a conservative estimate. It's based on a top-down approach. So we really don't have the fundamental, like, what it's gonna cost, what it's gonna do eventually. We don't have it mapped out yet, but we will have that mapped out in the future.
So what do you base that 0.1% on? What's kind of the story behind that? Is that, I know you were talking about working with some of the 4G providers in Latin America who are struggling because they obviously don't have the revenue to upgrade the infrastructure. So a software solution is ideal because they don't really have to, you telling us that it's plug and play. So they're basically gonna be able to enhance their current networks to 5G without really investing in any additional antennas or other equipment, right? So how many, in order to do that 0.1%, like how many of these relationships do you think you have to build in order for that to happen? Are you working with Open RAN? Are you working with the mobile network operators, or where exactly? Remind me exactly where you think you are.
Great question. So as you can see, we have our arrow coming in here because our software goes into the equipment vendors. That's who we initially work with. But the people that end up benefiting are the MNOs. They're the ones that want this. So we really have to take a two-pronged approach to this and kind of schmooze both of them. Because they're the ones that are gonna benefit, but they're the ones we have to work with to get it out there.
Okay.
And so, like we mentioned, the 0.1%, that's because, like we said, 95% of the market is the current existing equipment vendors. We're gonna have to disrupt them, we're gonna have to dislodge them, and we're not alone in that. You know, a lot of companies are out there. We just wanted to be safe, better safe than sorry with our estimates, you know?
Okay, so if you are gonna have to work with the Open RAN providers, how much influence do you think, or I don't know if you uncovered this at all during your Voice of Stakeholder, how much influence do the MNOs have on them? Because is it a market pull where whatever the MNOs want, the Open RAN tries to adopt, or is it a market push where they just do what they want to do and force the MNOs to deal with whatever that is?
That's a great question. We're gonna do more research on that. But what I do know right now, my hypothesis is these mobile network operators, specifically Vodafone and Telefonica, conducted RFIs recently where they took a bunch of companies that are in this area and they take their, you know, they let them compete and they let them see like, oh, who can do this, who can meet all of the requirements. So I think it's gonna be a pool kind of model.
Andrew, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why can't you take the algorithm and just work with the mobile network operators?
That's a great question, Greg. The reason is it's like jailbreaking your iPhone. You can't if you jailbreak your iPhone, it voids the warranty, you can't go to Apple, right? The same thing that happens to mobile network operators. If they touch this equipment that they have, they void the warranty, they void the contracts, you can't do that. So that's why it's such a complex problem, because obviously they would love to have, you know, they'd love to try new stuff out and get it going, but you can't just do that. You gotta work with equipment providers.
So question, you noted that pretty much Intel in parallel and Altiostar kind of dominate this part of the market. So, as you said, we're gonna have to fight them a little bit. How about instead of fighting them, we pick one of these as a target? Like maybe Intel's the biggest, but if I went to Altiostar, maybe I have enough value then that you could usurp Intel as an Open RAN equipment provider or something like that. In other words, where is your value add the highest? Is it to the Open RAN or is it to the mobile network operators? I'm not sure. Instead of trying to fight those three, I might pick the one that would offer me the best deal and run with them, because by definition I could jump in real quick at more than 1/10 of 1%. Maybe not the biggest one. I go to number 3 and it helps them become number 1. Maybe it has the most value to the one with the least amount of total sales now? I don't know, I'm just thinking off the top of my head there.
Exactly. No. So let me clarify a little bit. These aren't the 5%. These aren't the 95% companies. These are the 5% companies that are trying to come in and disrupt. So that would be what we're trying to do. We're trying to partner with them.
Okay.
And
You're
we're
gonna
trying
partner with one of the small players to become a big player, because it has more value add for the small partner.
Exactly.
That makes sense to me.
Exactly. Sorry, if I wasn't clear on that.
No, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you now that makes more sense.
So I have a question also, and you guys did a great job explaining that so much more than last time. I was a little in the clouds last time, and this time I'm getting it. So this is a complex process here, so you guys have done a good job breaking this down. So in terms of who your target market is, you're gonna go here at that open brand group is where you're really focused. Have you been able to do any VOCs with anyone in that space, and or the sort of next space who you'd be selling to, or who the ring would be selling to?
That is a great question, and we have people identified, but in the last couple weeks, it takes months to develop these VOC relationships, and we're planning to do it over time and into the next semester, but currently we just identified that this is a good new market, so we need to set up those relationships, and we have people identified, but we need to get that out there.
So we will invest more time this summer on these POCs for our next 577.
But now that we have an idea, we're gonna go after them,
So let me make sure I understand. So you were originally thinking go after the mobile network operators, and you found out during your research that, wait a second, we got to go after these other guys. So now you got to get a whole different list of VOC candidates out of that pool in that market. Is that what I'm hearing?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah.
So initially, this has been an evolution, and you guys have been along the journey. It's been figuring out who we need to talk to and who our market is. Originally, we were thinking about talking to stadium owners, Like, we've gone from that to this, so I think it's been a fantastic, evolution. I think we've come a long way since then.
We have all the people from the different mobile network operators like Verizon, AT&T,
Sure.
and then we also have the people from the Huawei, and then we also figure out like Cisco, all those. So we're gonna.
Right. So you were poking around on the carrier side, and you find out, wait a second, we got to go back to the equipment vendors.
Yep.
Okay.
So question for you guys, you talked about the fact that Latin America is a really good place for you to look at because of issues with, I think there's probably a bigger delta between the demand and the actual ability to upgrade infrastructure, right? So I think the demand's everywhere, like everybody wants to be able to stream or whatever, right? And take advantage of all these awesome new technologies with IoT, cars, et cetera. And some of it's even in manufacturing, right? So there's a significant difference in terms of regulations, also just the likelihood of adoption in various countries in Latin America. It's obviously a very diverse area. Do you have any inkling as to where your better options might be to start looking, or are you still just looking kind of regionally right now?
Okay, so
Yeah, within Latin America, where do you think your better options are?
within LATAM, we have regions so we want to go where these places are, so that automatically rules out a couple spots, right? And then within that, we need to do more research. So
what is the green means that they're Open RAN commercial deployments, right? Are those a combination of those three large companies that you talked about, or like the Intel, I think there were three in your industry map, so.
yeah.
Do they compete against each other, or do they each have a monopoly in different regions, or what does it kind of look like? Like, if you mapped out who is where in that green section, are they everywhere, or like does one company have like one whole country or region? You might not know that. I'm not saying you need to know. I'm just curious because I'm like, I wonder how that works. Is it sort of like here, where if you look at a cell tower, every company has antennas on it, right? So it's all shared. But if you go to some rural places, pretty much just a couple, right? Because so they have more of a monopoly in that area, and maybe they sell some bandwidth to someone else. I'm just curious with this Open RAN commercial deployment, or do people overlap their territories, or is it monopoly?
That is,
I'm just curious about that because that would certainly impact, your sort of partnership power and your ability to help leverage one against the other, et cetera. So it might be something you want to look at moving forward. Definitely very interesting though.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Jeff?
And what does it look like on the mobile network operator side as far as, who the major players are? Are you having to fight, individually in each country, or do you have some bigger players where you can kind of carry over the relationships with some of the Open RAN into their networks? What's that look like?
Yeah, so this is, like we said, a developing trend right now. There are some good opportunities. So there is a company in Japan, Zukaten, and they have done this. They've done Open RAN. They're using all that architecture right now. So that would be, and they're looking to move into the Americas as well. So that would be a great place to start, I think. Does that kind of answer your question?
Well, I was talking more on the operator side who'd be buying into, incorporating this technology into their network.
That's an operator. That's a mobile network operator out of Japan. So they're trying to come to America.
So they're like a Verizon of Japan, or kind of sort of.
Exactly. They would be like in a Verizon, but smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cricket.
Yeah, or MIMO,
Without the Ryan Reynolds, right?
Exactly.
Any other questions?
So I have a question. So Latin and South America, pretty much Spanish and Portuguese speaking. So not a huge gap in terms of number of countries versus number of languages you have covered. Do you have any idea of, technical sales can always be done in English, of course, but on the ground with engineers and with installation people and stuff, you pretty much need to be in the language of the country. Do you have any idea of some of these Open RAN providers, whether they are more, do they have any background, or are they Spanish-based, or, Spain-based, or Latin American-based, where they might have an easier sell for you into the market? And would you be able to, I guess, as a team, work in a Spanish speaking market?
That's a great question. And I know a lot of those companies that are doing Open RAN are based in the US. US does have a high Spanish-speaking population, but we would have to do more research, but that's a great opportunity to identify a first person that we should be talking to. In terms of Spanish-speaking,
I was gonna say, I
Pooja?
personally have a little bit of Spanish background, but that's something we would have to find someone with more.
Yeah, un poquito,
As you expand the team, yeah.
but we'll work on it.
Yeah, but